Okay, as promised, I have an interview with Adrian Duncan that I did earlier this month. There are subtitles of this interview in Chinese for those of you um, who are tuning in from China to check this out. Um, and let me share with you some information really quick before we dive into this interview. Course starts on April 28th. Yes, this writing is in Chinese because it is for Chinese students. But you can see this is a core curriculum program, and it's a 2-year program. So I hope you enjoy this interview. And I'll tell you a little bit more also about Adrian as we go along. All right, enjoy.
Okay, so it's recording here.
Yes, it is. And hi, I am here with Adrian Duncan, astrologer and now friend, who's been a teacher of astrology for a long time, practitioner almost all of his adult life. So we're talking quite a long period of time. And actually, Adrian
Yeah.
and I are contemporaries. We're part of the same generation of astrologers that have been doing this for 50 years.
Have you also? So long.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's right.
uh.
All the way back.
I haven't been full time personally for 50 years. I've been full time for 40 years.
Yeah, for me, actually, full-time astrology, nothing else. It's like 48 years, something like that. 47 years,
Wow.
47
Wow.
years. Yeah,
You
yeah,
started young.
yeah, I did. And when we were young and we were learning astrology and excited about astrology, which we've remained all these years,
Yeah.
we didn't have any schools per se back
No.
then. There was no internet back then. There were no online courses. There was nothing really for us
Mm.
except for reading books and having tutoring and attending workshops, things of this
And
nature.
there weren't many books either.
Right. And the books themselves were sometimes not of very great quality, and there weren't that many of them also. So you
Mm.
know, we I think we all probably read Max Heindel's Simplified Scientific
Mm.
Astrology and and other such books in the beginning, back in the 70s.
I read Alan Leo, actually, Astrology for
Oh,
All,
me
I think. I
too, of
love that
course.
book. I love that
Hallelujah.
book.
Yeah.
That's what turned me on to astrology, like real serious.
Yes,
Yeah.
some of the first, textbooks that I had on astrology were Alan Leo, of course, who
Mm.
is, attempted to reinvent astrology in the modern world in a modern context. He was really the first astrologer to sort of
Mm.
dramatically attempt that effort, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
which was really amazing considering the time. But here's the point I want to make, which is that when you and I were starting off. There was no school per se. And so one of the things that I felt was important to give back would be, wouldn't it be nice for students, for young people um, who are learning astrology, really, really interested in astrology, to have a professional program if they really want to do it for a living, to have a good professional program to help them realize their goal. And as you know,
Yeah.
Adrian, that's what we ended up establishing in China as the first Western school of astrology in China. And Adrian, of course, is one of our teachers. You've been teaching with us now off and on. I think,
Yeah, it's great school and great students. They're so
yeah,
clever.
yeah. I think you've been teaching various things for us for 5 years at least, something like
Maybe
that.
four,
Yeah.
4 years, 5 years,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had heard of Adrian for many years because he's a published astrologer. He has a website that is more than the typical website. He created an astrological app. Um, he, he was traveling back and forth between India and Denmark and various places. And I said, wow, this guy's leading an amazing life. And now, eventually, when I'm in China, I get a chance to meet Adrian, and he becomes an important teacher on our
I
faculty.
could say things the other way around. However,
Yeah.
you went off to China, and you really said something great up there.
Well, it's been quite an experience and continues to be. And I hope that anyone in China who watches this interview will check out our school because it is a program just for Chinese speaking individuals who are interested in astrology. So it's not like something I can sell at this point in English here, on YouTube or anywhere else. But it is something I want people to know about, and I want anyone who's interested, who's Chinese, who is interested in studying Western astrology, to go to the website, which is at nodor.com. It's listed here on the on our on this particular site here on YouTube. So let's talk, Adrian. You've been very patient sitting there. Let's talk with you a little bit about your course. You are one of our core curriculum teachers, which is a 2-year professional program, and you are going to be starting that course on the 28th of April, just a couple of months away.
Right. I'll be ready.
And you will be co-teaching it with a Chinese teacher, Jackie Xu. And I think the two of you will really lead the students forward in their study of astrology. Um, Again, it's about a 2-year program. It could last all the way through November of 2026. And so, Adrian, I know that when you got interested in astrology, you were already a seeker in a way. You were already spiritually motivated, shall we say, to seek what you could find to be the truth. And you had traveled to India as part of that process.
Yeah. Do you want the story?
I'll bet it is. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I ended up in Delhi. I was 21 years old. That's when I saw this book, on the street market, Astrology for All, and
Wow.
I picked it. I picked out the book, and it just hit me like a thunderbolt, to be honest. And it opened up. I mean, it opened up everything in my head. It was like pretty dramatic. It was extremely dramatic because it was at the same time I discovered I'd made my girlfriend pregnant, and. I got a telegram on my 21st birthday in Kashmir saying that she was pregnant and that there was going to be an Aquarius child. And it was almost like the whole Aquarian thing awakened in me. It's just like it was really like that, right? I was pregnant and I became pregnant with Aquarius.
Right. And as it always is when you, uh, you know, be, give birth to something, you are then responsible for it and you will work hard at it. And it will be something that changes your life, and your life is never the same after that.
Yeah,
Right.
it is true, but it's not exactly work, is it? It's like
No.
very fortunate that you to do something you can't resist. You can't resist doing it. It's like you wouldn't do anything else at all. So you just try and clear everything else out of the way so you can do the astrology because it's so fascinating.
Right. And that's one of the many things that makes a career in astrology such a fulfilling possibility.
Yeah,
Um,
I couldn't, for the first 10 years after my 21st birthday, I couldn't practice astrology because I had two kids and I had a shop, in Liverpool. Um, but when Pluto hit my sun in the 10th, which is like career point, Pluto's like transformation, I couldn't do it anymore. And then I started working exclusively with astrology. And I was totally broke for a few years doing that until
mhm.
things kind of started picking up.
Right. It takes a while. I always
Yeah.
explain to the students, you know, that we have today that you're probably smarter than I was, number one. And two, you'll probably be able to move a little faster than we did because
Oh yeah, yeah.
there's
I
much
think that's
more.
really true.
Sure,
Yeah,
it is. I think
yeah, yeah,
there's the online exposure and support, and it's
yeah.
just so much information online, things that we didn't have access to when
Yeah.
when we
I
started
noticed that
out.
online people are really in tune with planetary movements. They know where the planets are. That's the real sign, of whether you're hooked or not. Do you
Right,
know where the planets are at any particular moment in time? And I noticed that a lot of people are today,
right.
young people.
That's right. And I think it's a recognition that astrology is a valuable frame of reference for trying to understand
Yeah,
yourself and understand your life,
yeah. It's
and that
not
it's
only
useful and
valuable.
practical in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just valuable, really. There's no frame of reference, no frame of reference that can compete with astrology on every level because it's a meta understanding of of the mind, nature, and the universe. It's just fantastic subject.
Of course, you and I, feel that way. We've been we've
Yeah,
been devoted to and motivated by this field, all our lives. But it is an honor to be able to share that experience in a professional program. And um, what do you think are the most important um, things that a student would get in studying with you, working with you? What are some of the things you hope that a student might um, retain and use from studying with you?
well, yeah. I mean, they have to live it. You see, they have to live the astrology. They have to see it's working around them. So what they're going to get is me showing it's really working. And what is said in textbooks is just a representation of the incredible immensity of the power of planetary movement, which is like ever present. So it's a living experience with astrology. That's what they're going to get from me, not a kind of intellectual understanding so much as a kind
It's
of
more of an immersion.
yeah, yeah, an immersion in so that they feel it. They feel that it's working for
Yes.
them.
Yeah, that's really what we offer. That's what we've kind of created at No Door. Once someone signs up for, the core curriculum, level one through level five, they are it is immersion because number one, they not only have your lectures, and they have, the other your teacher, your co-teacher Jackie. They have his lectures. They also have the question, the Q&A that they'll do with a TA, with a teacher's assistant. Um, they also have someone who monitors their WeChat group, which is their student group, which is open
Mm.
24/7, obviously, WeChat platform that allows them to post charts, discuss each other's charts, and so forth in a
Yeah,
in a
and
private context on WeChat. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and once you start as a beginner, and once you get the fact that you're really in a world that is in harmony with the planets, it doesn't matter if you're just beginning. You're gonna the inspiration's going to carry you along. It's like a great time. The beginning part of astrology is a great time for a kind of life transforming experience, really.
Yes. And many times it coincides an interest in astrology, especially a serious interest in astrology, will coincide with major life events where you're reinventing your life or going through some life-changing circumstances like you did also.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I really did. It changed everything for me.
Right. So it was interesting. We were both early fathers, you
Oh,
know.
right. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
yeah,
that. Though.
that's right.
How old were you then?
I was 20 years old, so I was
Oh
very
my God,
yeah,
you
yeah,
beat
yeah,
me. I
yeah.
was 21.
Yeah. So
Well,
there was a parallel there that I didn't even know
yeah.
about. This is
No, I didn't
interesting.
either. Gosh.
Right, right.
And I got real serious because of getting a kid, because I was a little bit of a sort of a traveler, a hippie. and I had to stop that and start earning money and supporting.
Well, um, I actually discovered astrology when I was 19. So it was like right during, basically during the time when everything changed, you know. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So,
yeah,
um, we could, you and I both, and of course you've written a couple of astrology, at least a couple of books that I know about
yeah. I've
astrology
written two books, but I've written so much else. I've written
articles.
about a
Yeah,
thousand articles. I
yeah,
think.
right.
You know,
People can read those, of course, on your website.
12,
They can read.
maybe not a thousand, a couple of hundred articles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And people can access some of your articles on your website.
Yeah, and
Right, right,
some YouTube stuff as well. Yeah.
right. Great. So anyway, um, it is it's exciting to have you involved in our core curriculum. I think that your experience, your point of view will really help students to grow and develop confidence as a practicing astrologer, which even after they graduate can take some years to really acquire.
Yeah. Well, they just need to start, and then they learn from experience, and that's what happens. So it's not just what you learn educationally, it's like talking to people, talking to clients. It becomes like a much better teacher, in fact, the actual experience. Uh, and life itself becomes a teacher. So,
I say, if you're a student, take advantage of being a student. So when you're talking with other people about astrology and they're curious about their own chart, don't
mm,
assume that you're supposed to suddenly have all these answers because you don't. And in fact, you never will have all the answers. So don't worry about that. Instead,
right.
learn how to have a meaningful conversation with your friend or your ultimately your client by
Yeah.
asking
And
questions.
ask questions, right?
Right.
Exactly. Ask the questions, and then you get confirmation of how precise astrology is.
Right. Or even just an I don't know answer or I'm not sure leads to the beginning of a conversation about, well, look, what is the truth about
Yeah,
you?
of course.
What
Yeah,
is your reality? What is your experience? What does
exactly.
that mean? So, these fundamental questions about life are questions that astrology helps to answer, you know, you know. And the answers come from you. They don't come from you, the teacher, me, the teacher. It comes from the student, ultimately comes from the client. When they have
Yeah,
clients,
exactly. Mm.
the real answer, just like the real dilemma, is in the person.
Right. So the skill is in kind of um, identifying the area, and asking questions that evoke
Right.
like precise responses, which you can correlate to astrological influences. And once you've got the correlation between their issue and the astrological influence, then you can pretty much explain what's going on, why, and what to do about it.
Right. Um, yeah, and you can ask questions that are kind of leading questions because you've got the indicator. I mean, if somebody was born um, with a Mercury Uranus square, something like that, you can say, do you get bored easily? Are you more interested in original or unique ideas? And the things of
Well, you're
that.
so polite, David, right?
What's that?
I mean, I would probably ask the question, do you interrupt people?
Yeah.
Oh, I just did it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's a Mercury Uranus square right there. Yeah. Um, so by having this kind of conversation with another person about their chart, it develops a framework within which that person can make sense of their life. If
Of course, yeah, yeah.
it's like, and that's what people will say. People will, over the many years of feedback from clients, this is what they'll say. They say, I finally understood things better that I had been working on my whole life, but I'd never been able to grasp it quite that way, you know. So this kind
Yeah,
of feedback. So it's exciting for students to discover that because if you're talking with your friends, you may even discover things about your friends when you talk with them about their chart as a student that you didn't know,
of course.
right?
Yeah. Mm.
That you had no idea. Um, so what else would you say to a student who's interested in becoming an astrologer, taking this course? What else would you say to them, Adrian?
What else would I say?
Yeah, I put you on the
It's
spot.
great, in the group, it's great to communicate with the others. I had in Denmark, I had a school which trained astrologers to be astrologers. They'd already learned astrology, so I trained them to be astrologers, right? Uh, and those groups were just fantastic because they all stimulated each other, and we had real experiential teaching sessions, your colleagues, your fellow students are going to be, you're going to learn more from them than from us, probably.
That's true, and that's why, you know, of course, we have some offline events too, but most of it's online at this point, especially since the pandemic. And when the students interact with each other on WeChat, they are learning from each other. And we've found, over the 15 years that No Door has been in existence, you know, we have found that that is a way to learn quickly. And you're right.
Yeah, it is
They
so much. Yeah,
probably learn more from interacting with each other than they do from us. Um, you know, and
yeah,
I think that's probably true. But when you combine it all, when you combine, the live, lectures and the Q&A, and then watching recordings, and you combine all that together with the interaction with each other on a day-to-day basis. So if, in that sense, can you imagine having something like that when you and I were just starting off in astrology? Think back to the
I
1970s.
don't know. I when I was like before I became professional, I lived in Wales, and I knew nobody who knew anything about astrology. But
Uh-huh.
once I went down to London to a conference, astrology
Mhm.
conference, it was just like, oh, it was just
Mm.
fantastic, right? But that was like in a period of several years that I just got one experience, right?
Right,
When I came to Copenhagen, it was a really active astrological scene. Were
right. Hmm.
really good astrologers. Wow, man. And there's still, some of the best astrologers I've met in the world practicing, who I met
Hmm.
in Denmark. They're so good, you know. So yeah, it's great to have the colleagues.
Right. And, just the idea that you've got now 24/7 interaction with your fellow
Yeah,
students,
yeah, right.
you know.
Yeah, so this new generation is going to be kind of, well, ahead, way ahead of
Yeah, way
the
ahead of,
older, I think,
of
in
where
that
we
sense.
were. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But what we
But
do have to,
astrology can expand
yes,
exponentially the more you understand it. So you're never going to reach any limits whatsoever.
right.
There's so much to learn and so much to get better at. But I think the most important thing is to understand that astrology is is um, is a map of what's going on moment by moment by moment,
Right.
and wisdom of astrology is when you live in the here and now and you're observant about what's going on around you moment by moment, because it really literally is second by second that there are developments taking place which are in a dance with the movement of the planets. So that's like the ultimate goal, I think, is to be that, living in the here and now and understanding what's going on around you.
Hmm.
Uh, there's no limit to what that reveals, because every moment contains um, the accumulated energy of the past, And astrology is like a map of the moment because you know where the planets have been and where they are now and where they're going. There is this possibility of coming with forecasts or predictions about how things are going to develop because you can just follow planetary movement. There's no other method I know that is has this kind of ability.
Right. And even if you take, let's say, the predictive aspect of astrology, which is often an interesting area, astrology is about prediction. A birth chart itself is about prediction because it is a chart that represents, the way in which a person is likely to grow or develop, or what their issues or
Yeah, yeah,
challenges might
yeah,
be. So in that way,
yeah.
it's all predictive, in that sense. Um, but the prediction aspect of it is like looking at a moment, being in that moment as a potential, not as an absolutely fated situation. You might
Well,
be
you're never going to know, are you, what's going to
able.
happen actually? You
Right.
can only use your own experience and intelligence to see which way it's going to go. So when you're working with clients, the best way of dealing with predictive situations is to check out with them what do they want? What do they want? Because generally what people want is what they get. Um, you just kind of need to clear away some obstacles so that they can achieve what they set their heart and mind on, right? And you can see that in the chart.
Yes, absolutely. And that potential, it's true. Everything in the chart has a destructive potential and a constructive potential. And what we, of course, try to focus on is how to develop the constructive part, and at the same time facing and being real about the more destructive urges. So it's
Yeah, I mean everyone's got their thing, haven't they? They're always
right,
everybody, I think, equally, almost equally, have got some really difficult issues they deal with, right? And everybody's got some fantastic resources which make them unique.
right,
Um, so there's nothing wrong with having problems. They're like the engines of change, aren't they? Where your engines of personal development.
right,
You know?
right. Absolutely. And it's, the it will, all I can say is astrology is the best representation for of the human experience and our human reality of anything I've seen. Nothing else.
Yeah, right. I
Even
can't.
though I'm interested in many other things,
Yeah,
it's all now understood through that framework.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's one thing I think that's rises slightly above the capacity of astrology, and that's like spiritual practice. Because
Mhm.
people have belief systems, and sometimes they've kind of got a little bit more power than astrology. At least for me, I have a priority slightly higher than astrology, which is my Buddhist practice, right?
Right.
And so I try and well, I have succeeded to a large extent in merging this to mm, to fields of knowledge, so that they support each other in many ways. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, um, is there anything else that you would like to share about your your own spiritual point of view that you think would be interesting to the students to kind of know just where you're coming from uh, as far as your perspective? You have in other words, when you discovered astrology, you were already interested in what we call spiritual things. You were already interested in that, and
Yeah, but I didn't have a framework for understanding
right,
them, whereas I believe I do now. And I think that my view is that it's all based on sensory impressions of the world out there, or reality, as people claim it to be, and the actual fact is that our brain. Um, mostly it's engaged in sorting things away, sorting things
Right.
out. We're not trying to experience as much as possible. We're trying to experience as little as possible so that we can understand, like, in our own personal trajectory through the
Right.
world. So if you take something like Venus, for a planet like Venus, Venus shows what you're attracted to. What there's a kind of magnetic attraction to. Uh, um, but basically, you know, we're only magnetically attracted to about 1% of something. We're not. There's so many things we just don't even register because
Right.
we're not interested in it.
Right.
And that's a kind of filter. So Venus becomes a kind of filter. So, if you have Venus in aspect to uh, what can it be, Saturn, you
Right.
you you know you you you're filtering. You're careful. You're making careful choices, so you're
Mhm.
not going to get rejected. So
Right.
the Saturn is the experience, so the difficult experiences. So you have a careful filter, so you're not going to, go with a football player or anything like that. You're going to go, find a partner who's going to provide some kind of structure and security. And that's unique to you. So every planet filters like that. Jupiter, for example, filters belief systems, right? And we identify incredibly strongly with these belief systems, but
Hmm.
they're all illusory, because they're just based on our own personal experiences, where we're filtering out all the things we don't believe in because of experiences we've had in life, you know. And then you've got people, so Jupiter aspects show what you kind of sort out, all the things you don't believe in. And then you've got this narrow area that you believe in, and it becomes part of your identity. Uh, and all these things in the horoscope, these filters, these planetary filters, they're all limiting uh, a true experience of reality. And that's where astrology and Buddhism can mesh together, I think, because they
Yes.
become a pathway to a more direct experience of sensory experience, you could say.
And it's also about the sense of resonance that things have with each other, which I think Buddhism is certainly about that feeling of resonance with life, in life.
Yeah,
You
exactly. It
know,
is a totally resonance. You're right.
right.
That filter, what I call a filter, is like also kind of resonance. Resonance. Mm.
It's like when two waves hit each other, if they're in sync, the wave will get bigger. It gets
Yeah, right.
excited,
That's so true.
right.
That's a really nice metaphor. Yeah.
Whereas when they're not in sync, the wave kind of crumbles and gets smaller. Yeah, yeah,
That's true. That's true. That's true.
yeah,
Yeah, right. That's what happens with disagreements, I think.
yeah. Yes. However, even as you get into astrology, you'll learn that something about aspects, for example. And aspects is sort of the geometry of astrology,
Mm.
in that
Yeah, right,
it shows
exactly.
the
Mm.
angular relationship between planets in a birth chart relative to their zodiac position,
Mm.
you know. And these aspects, we'll look at some aspects and we'll say, well, that's a challenging aspect, and it is like a square and opposition. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. It just means that it's a challenge. It's something that will, take more of your time and energy to work with and deal with.
Yeah, I think some of the most successful people are the people who have dealt with the difficult aspects,
Yes.
and kind of channel the energy, because they create a lot of tension, a lot of energy. So you got to do something with that, and then
That's
you can achieve stuff, right? I
right.
don't think there's harmonious aspects. Now, they're not so kind of result oriented. Harmonious aspects are resources. uh, underestimated normally by many astrologers, you know. So there's a kind of interesting mix. You
Yeah.
know, it's like what one American president said: "There's nothing wrong with America that what's right with America won't solve."
Uh,
So there's nothing wrong with the horoscope that what's right with the horoscope won't help you deal with. Right?
right. Right. Wow. Well, all I can say, Adrian, is it, for anyone really interested in seriously deep diving into astrology, to have you as a teacher, that would be a lot to look forward to. And we really look forward to having you with us for these next 2 years in
Yeah,
China.
it's going to be quite an experience, I think.
I mean, everything
Um,
you're saying resonates, use the word again, resonates with even my first experience in China in 2010 when I was there in the beginning um, on my book tour. People would ask questions about squares and oppositions. They would show some knowledge of astrology. They would say,
mhm.
I have such and such square. Is that bad? Will I die? They would ask, from this, is this the end for me? Blah, blah, blah. They'd ask all kind of extreme questions. And I would look out and say, a square is a building block of character. And there would be blank faces all around. No,
Oh, really?
yeah, everyone was like, what? What does he mean, building block for character? Isn't it a bad thing? So there was only the looking at everything in the chart as either good or bad. That point of view was pretty pervasive. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, from the beginning. So introducing the idea that astrology could be a guide for that could help you in your own personal growth, decision making in life, relationships, family, all these things. I think it was more looking at it as something to look at to see what was going to happen to you. You know, everyone would
Yeah.
hold their phone up to me,
Right, right, right.
and say,
Right. But that's actually a
what's
very
going to happen
Eastern,
to me? And I'd be
yeah,
like,
that's an
I
Eastern
don't
view, I
know.
think. Yeah.
I don't know what's
Uh,
going to happen to you. I don't know. All right.
Mind you, I mean, I was teaching a horary course in Nodo, and
Right. I
these
know.
people, the students were really good. And I think they're pretty good also at saying what might happen. They were very good. I was very impressed by them.
Right. Right. And one of the first things that people need to know is that context is everything with astrology. For example,
Yeah, that's true.
an astrological chart will not tell you what political party somebody belongs to. An astrological chart will not tell you how much money they have in the bank or what their income earning potential is in real dollars. The chart the chart will not tell you that, but it will. But from a chart, you can have a discussion with a person about their income earning potential, and you can talk about money, and you can talk about
Yeah, you can talk
career and
about
things
what
like
might
that.
sabotage
Right, right,
and what might increase. I think you can what thing where their talents lie, right? People just need to realize their talents, then they'll be happy. They
right,
don't have to earn tons of money. That would come naturally. You know?
right, right. But it's been a common question in China when I first got there. Will I be wealthy? It's a big
Mm,
question,
mm.
and my answer was
Well,
usually
it doesn't help, does it? You're
disappointing.
just going to say yes or no or what, and what difference does it make? It's all relative, isn't it? Really?
Right, right, right. I would just say, Wabujidao, which means I don't know. I don't know. Very disappointing to everyone who asked me that question. You know, but I would talk about it in terms of what you can look at to maybe help you identify what is reward for you. What does reward you? What does bring you fulfillment?
Mm.
And finding that is about as
Yeah,
important as it
you
gets.
have to do what your charts suggest is beneficial. You don't want to go against that. So it's not what other people want you to do. It's tuning in to what you feel if you just are authentic and tune into what you really want yourself, you're going to be living out your horoscope anyway.
And that's the other thing. If you're, the word authentic, very important there, Adrian, because if, astrology is to help you to be real, to discover what's there, to really look in the mirror and get a detailed reflection of who you are.
Yeah, and it also helps you identify your naughty character
That's right.
traits, which kind of mess things up, right?
Right.
And I think if you know your own chart, you're kind of a little bit more aware of these things which you wouldn't normally be conscious of, which actually can be create sort of problematic results, right?
Right.
Um,
And
yes.
once you're aware of something, that awareness does change your perspective and even potentially your behavior.
Yeah, that's true. That's what we want to see.
Right.
People, like people who can be dominating, for example. Like I have a Sun Jupiter opposition, and it makes me a little bit. I think I'm right a lot of the time,
Mm.
because the filter of Jupiter is like with the Sun, it's like, well, I'm right, right, and I'm not so sure about the other person. So that's a real problem,
But it's Jupiter in
which
Capricorn. So do you uh, treat the other person's beliefs with respect? Of course.
I do actually, but it's
Yeah.
true I do now.
Mhm.
But it's also because it's related to my father. He was in the military, the Royal Air Force,
Right.
so
Right.
he always came home in uniform. That's Jupiter in Capricorn in the fourth house.
Hmm.
And he was a very dominating character. He was a dominating character, which I kind of fought against, right?
Right.
So he evoked my aversion to authority, really.
And he
That
probably
became a
seemed
problem.
seemed like a kind of larger than life individual when you were growing
Yeah,
up.
yeah, he certainly did.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but then I got this teacher, Tibetan Lama teacher, who was a double Capricorn.
Wow.
I couldn't help but respect all that. I had to respect this, right? Because he was much, much, much wiser than me. So, that I mean, it's worked both ways for me. That Sun Jupiter.
Right. And again, what Adrian, for those of you who are not familiar with astrology, Adrian is referring to his own chart
Yeah,
where the Sun and Jupiter were opposite each other when he was born, and talking about
yeah,
a little bit of what that can mean. We often associate the Sun with father in a birth chart, among other things,
mm,
and
mm.
the Sun Jupiter might imply a father who seems larger than life, whose belief systems try to dominate you about what's right, his point of view, and even a father who travels. And in this case,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we all did, of course,
right,
in the military.
which is
Um,
Jupiterian, see the travel, so we can see how your experience growing up is clearly reflected as by your birth chart, as we would expect. You know, yeah. All right. So, is there anything else before we in this official interview? Is there anything else that you would like to say to potential students from China or Chinese students anywhere in the world who are listening to this? Is there anything else to say?
I'm sure there is. Just let me think a second.
All right.
Well, I think, you're going to be listening to people like us that teaching, right? But you may be the teacher of the future, so there's no need to be kind of too impressed by what we do or anything like that. You can be much better than that. Uh, so we're going to respect you just as much as you're going to respect us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Um, so here's an opportunity for students to get to know you and to learn astrology. And thank you so much for chatting with me today. I look forward to maybe
Well,
some
yes.
interviews or things that are some podcasts maybe in the future where we're not
Yeah, that I always
just
like to
talking
do it.
about
It's always nice on the kind of, interview and podcast. I love that.
great. All right, Adrian. Well, yeah,
when I don't have to do any preparation. Just say what comes into my head.
right. There's no 39-page PPT here.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Great. All right, Adrian. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay,
All right.
see you later.
Bye for
I'll
now.
sign off now then. Yeah.